special presentation of Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Brenda Wood, and this is Minute by Minute. The Civil War ended 130 years ago, but the Confederacy still lives for some Southerners. Even the Georgia state flag bears the Confederate battle symbol.
That's what they mean in the song when it says old times here are not forgotten.
To ask me to give up a Southern symbol, to me would be the same as to ask me to give up my cross.
But one man's heritage can be another man's source of pain.
I think that the Confederate symbol has its place, and that, of course, is in a museum.
Are preservationists saving the past or trying to resurrect the past? The battle wages on.
The Confederate flag stands for only one thing: slavery.
Join me for a personal exploration of this land some call Dixie. Does it matter that it is offensive? A battle of another kind rages on the Carolina coast.
This is our home, our land. Let us get together and plan what we want.
Developers are itching to turn this pristine land into prime resort property, while islanders struggle to hold on to the beauty and culture of an earlier time.
Anybody under 50 knows nothing about Gullah.
But the temptation to trade the past for profit is great.
If I came up to you for $25,000 right now and said, I'll give you this $25,000.
Would you sell out? Organ transplant. It's a medical miracle that can turn one person's tragedy into another's second chance at life. A 10-year-old Georgia girl lives today with the heart of a little boy who died in New York. That boy's family would never have known who got Ryan's heart if fate hadn't brought them together.
My first reaction when I saw that picture, I thought to myself, what a beautiful little girl.
The story of two families forever changed by the precious gift of life. When these guys talk about sinning, they know what they're talking about.
Speed and cocaine, hash and pot, it was all the time.
They are no angels.
I was just a hellion. I was just on the road to hell.
But now they ride the roads for Jesus, saving souls wherever they can.
The Spirit's working on you, ain't it? God works in mysterious ways.
Good evening and welcome to Minute by Minute. If you were given your own museum, what would you put in it? Photos? Old letters? Tonight, we explore how far each of us might go to preserve the pieces of our lives, those things we consider most precious, from traditions to life itself. We begin here at the Road to Tara Museum with a look at the Old South, those romanticized images that Gone with the Wind made so popular. And yet there are those who'd argue that this is not at all an accurate recall of the Southern heritage. So tonight, we take a look at those images and how they hold vastly different meanings for different people.
This was given to me by my grandmother wrapped in this purple velvet. And this is the watch chain that William Singleton Gray wore.
Jim Reynolds saves treasures from his family tree like a connoisseur of good wine. The older it is, the better.
He left it with his wife when he went off to war, and then it was passed on down to me.
Reynolds is a great-great-grandson of a Confederate veteran, and he's adamant about preserving his heritage.
He was killed in the Battle of Resaca, and that's what this painting is depicting. The thing is that the scene shows where my ancestor gave the ultimate sacrifice for a cause that he believed in.
It's not a matter of someone telling me about my great-great-great-grandmother. I have a photograph.
Skip Mason is just as intense about preserving his past.
It's painful. You know, I don't allow myself to wallow in the past, but I do want to have an understanding of it.
He is a great-great-great-grandson of a slave.
Her name was Ellen London Barton. As a child, she had to hold hot irons. And when she became an adult, she would share with her grandchildren, show them the lines that those old hot irons had caused. You know,
Skip Mason and Jim Reynolds both hold dearly to the pieces that built their families. They share their love of history, their Southern roots, and their emergence from the Civil War. What they don't share is their perspective on Dixie.
When I think of the Confederacy, I think of the movie Gone with the Wind. But there is another side of that story. My family members working as field hands and working as on the plantation.
It's interesting what we choose to remember of our past. There are things we cherish and many things we choose to forget, or at the very least, not talk about. We all save things differently. What we store in that old dusty trunk, whether it be in the attic or in the mind, speaks volumes about our experiences.
When you think about the Southern civilization, why not think about its best virtues, its best characters? Why not think about the Tara House?
From one genealogist to another, I think that is great, but I think we really need to be clear. What is it you want to preserve?
For some, it's become a crusade to keep history alive. Gone with the Wind still lives.
Well, in many cases, they're preserving their image of what they would like for the Old South to have been.
And it may be just what Olympic visitors will be looking for in Atlanta next year, though Skip Mason sure hopes not.
And I'm just afraid that for that opening ceremony, there will be more hoop skirts at that Olympic field than we would really care to fathom.
What do we preserve? The battle still wages.
We can do an awful lot of things with the past, and we do. But one thing we can't do is invent it and then go live in it.
Saving pieces of the past is at the very heart of the controversy over the Georgia state flag. Sons of Confederate Veterans, the organization that Jim Reynolds belongs to, insists on keeping the Confederate battle emblem.
People of the South, that's our banner. We didn't create it, we inherited it. And it is a symbol of the fact that our ancestors struggled for independence one time.
Charles Lunsford, who works in the governor's office, is a fast-talking, articulate salesman of history as he sees it. His audience, a group of out-of-state high school students.
But do you think we ought to have a flag, you ought to have a flag in Georgia that most of the people can feel proud of?
Most of the people do. Polls show 78% of the people love the flag.
Actually, the Harris poll found 71% of Southern Americans, black and white, don't find the flag offensive.
It is wrong to say that it's a white flag. It is wrong to say that. 50,000 African American troops wore gray uniforms and fought with the Confederacy.
It is a part of my heritage. And it's a part of a whole lot of other blacks' heritage.
Nelson Winbush's grandfather fought as a Confederate soldier alongside the plantation owner's son.
They grew up together, they played together, they did everything together, and went to war together. He would go out and procure food, supplies, munition, whatever was needed.
For the sake of his family's history, Winbush takes the same position as Lunsford. The rebel flag is a piece of the past worth saving and waving.
When I pass on, it'll be passed on to my son, Nelson II. It represents, to me, an era of time in this country when people stood up for what they thought was right.
Sometimes preservation and conscience don't see eye to eye.
It represents white supremacy. It represents lynchings, murders, lies.
Saving pieces of our past is almost always meaningful to someone, but it's not always pleasant. Sometimes saving can be painful. Here in Milwaukee at America's Black Holocaust Museum, a painful past is preserved for all to see. Well, what is the idea here? Is it to frighten people when they see this?
No, it's the idea to let people know what is the history of America. This is a part of the history of America. Why keep it hid?
James Cameron is the museum's founder. He preserves documented evidence of lynchings in America. His mission, he says, after escaping his own lynching in 1930, his buddies Tommy and Abe met death.
They get me up to the courthouse where Tom and Abe was hanging on the tree, and they put a rope around my neck, and then they pushed me up between the two of them, and there I stood with death on both sides of me. And they threw the end of the rope over the tree, and when they did that, I prayed to God. I said, Lord, have mercy and forgive me my sins. And then one of those unusual things happened. A voice came out from heaven and said, take this boy back. He had nothing to do with any killing or raping. They took that rope off my neck, and they allowed me to stumble and stagger and wobble back to the jail.
Cameron says during the years of Reconstruction, there were thousands of lynchings, mostly in the South. He says the history books don't tell the whole story. Though Charles Lunsford doesn't buy it, he argues with a group of high school students that the numbers are exaggerated.
You're dealing with tens of millions of people here. And if you find 50 people that were lynched, it wasn't so bad, although it was bad.
They want you to believe that. But black people, the way we tell our history is altogether different. Now, why leave out some of the past and just tell the others? Once you know the truth about our country, then the truth will make us free.
But even truth can be up for debate depending on what you save. Our personal treasures are one thing, but public symbols quite another. They stir controversy and elicit the full gamut of emotions, with no resolve in sight. For Jim Reynolds, the truth is embodied in the Confederate battle emblem, though it holds entirely different meanings for different people. For him, there is no compromise on its place in the South. Does it matter to you and to the SCV that it is offensive? Does it matter?
We do not want people to be offended.
Does it matter that it is offensive?
We do not want people to be offended, but we're not going to compromise on it.
There is no easy resolution. We save for different reasons, sometimes to preserve the poignant, sometimes to remember our mistakes. Here at the Apex Museum, both the positive and negative aspects of African American history are preserved. Everything we save defines us, telling us who we are and where we're going. When we come back, I'll introduce you to another kind of saving.
I could see that I couldn't make it like I was.
My heart's just worn out.
These are just a few of the many Georgians who have been waiting for a heart transplant.
I have no alternative.
Wondering if their own heart will last out the day.
A significant number of patients don't survive waiting for their heart transplant.
Happy birthday!
They long for the chance to gain back the precious gift of life.
To actually take a heart out of somebody else's body and put it in my body and it would work. I mean, what a miracle to give somebody else life.
Coming up next, Minute by Minute looks at saving lives through organ transplant. And later, you'll travel to St. Helena Island, where some residents want to sell their land to developers.
You can't hold progress back, you know.
And others are fighting tooth and nail to save both the land and the culture of their ancestors.
My land will never be sold.